I need like a, what if I just like taped it to my tripod, then I can look at it and read it at the same time. So welcome to the first month of my monthly Q&A. And the theme for this month is fabric and sewing. So let's just jump right into it. I'm going to start off with the questions from my Facebook. Jessica Tucker asks, wow, I say that word weird too. How did you get started? I want to start sewing, but I'm intimidated. How I got started was I wanted to make things and make costumes that they didn't sell in stores. So I had to do it myself, and I had my mother and my grandmother to help me and give me tips and try to just like get me started. But from there on out, it was all just practice, trial and error, just getting things right. And then from things I learned and what didn't work, I just have grown to where I am now. Linda Rogers asks, do you have any suggestions for getting better with sewing in general, other than just practice? Practice? I mean, sewing is just like anything else. Playing sports, learning math, you just have to practice at it to get better. Valley? I'm gonna say Valley. Liz Ballet asks, if I just got started sewing, what is a good semi-expensive machine to buy? I would say any basic sewing machine, like usually Brothers or Singers are a good base. I highly recommend actually going to repair stores first. A lot of the times they will have refurbished machines that they are selling at a much lower price than a brand new machine from a new store. Elodie Schoolfield? Is that how you pronounce your name? We're gonna go with that. How do you pick a fabric for animated characters? A lot of this is going to be your own creative license. I would see what type of character you are cosplaying. Like, are you cosplaying Lara Croft? Are you cosplaying Queen Elizabeth? Those different types of characters are going to have different types of fabrics. So I guess decide what kind of clothing you can see your character wearing. Is it like basic cotton t-shirts? Is it just some like normal peplin? Or are you going to want to go with like the more expensive stuff like the silks and the satins? So kind of go from there based on like what you think your character would go and buy and make their clothing from. Michelle Fervena! I remember you, girl, from the last time I was filming. How does your fabric selection process go? For the most part, I like to touch and to feel fabric. And I will just wander around the store, touching things, stretching things, feeling it, holding it up to sunlight, just seeing how it looks, matching it with different fabrics to see what ones look good for different parts of the costume. And then I pile them all up on the counter and I say I want these and then I don't want these. And then those are the ones I buy. Anelia Pinchera asks, how do I alter patterns to fit or change them for a costume? Altering patterns is kind of a more advanced skill, and as much as you're gonna hate me saying it, it comes with practice and trial and error knowledge to know what works and what doesn't work. But the best way to kind of alter a pattern or change the pattern to get it to fit to a certain character is to make a mock-up. And then from there you can fit it to your body type or change it to fit the look that you want. Moving on to Instagram questions. Shugio Kawaii Princess asks, do you have any good tips to sew in a zipper? Follow the instructions given to you on the pattern or on the zipper. It's pretty easy. Maybe I will make a sewing 101 video on that. That'll be pretty easy. I'll do that sometime in the future. Look forward to it. JW Hood 43 asks, do you have a sewing machine suggestion, and what fabrics do you suggest for someone starting a Disney princess cosplay? My best tip for you is if you're looking for a machine, do lots of research, do your Google Foo and research what it does for what price, and then make the decision of what your needs are. And fabrics for a Disney princess, I mean, again, this is all on your opinion. I personally think that since they are a princess, the fabrics you should use should be nicer, and for the majority, the more expensive fabrics. Not saying that you should pay more for them, but they should be the nicer fabrics. The Camille Monet asks, tips on sewing spandex or Lycra. Number 1, get the correct needle. Get a needle that is made for stretch fabrics. They are labeled, and those are the ones you need. 2 is use a zigzag stitch, whether it's like a lightning bolt shape or an actual zigzag. Those stitches are made to stretch with your fabric so you won't rip. And if you notice the fabric keeps getting stuck or it's not going through the machine because it stretches, try getting a walking foot. Those will help to actually push the fabric through more steadily and keep it from stretching and becoming weird. Princess Afada asks, any tips to cosplay with too many layers so you don't get hot? Nope. If you're wearing a lot of layers, you're going to be hot. I mean, it's going to help if you have thinner fabrics, but for the most part, you're going to be an oven for the day. Blonde Life 325 asks, how do I make faux spikes out of faux leather? That is very specific, girl. Or boy, you could be blonde either way, I don't know. Well, leather typically isn't very stiff unless you stiffen it, so I don't know how well the spikes are going to be spiky. I would actually make a spike out of craft foam or out of Warbler so it's hard and then cover that with your leather. I don't really understand the question, but that's what I would do. The Geeky Gamer Girl Cosplay asks, any tips for ball gowns or similar type dresses? Sit down because you are in for the long haul. Because there is so much fabric that goes into ball gowns, you are going to be sitting there working on it for a long time. I can't tell if those are L's and O's or ones and zeros. Meg 11022O asks for tips on sewing pleather and faux fur. For the most part, pleather you can put through your machine. Just make sure you're not sewing too many layers that your needle or your machine isn't strong enough to go through. As for faux fur, I suggest hand sewing it on at the very end of your cosplay, because if you put it through your machine, it's going to sew in a straight line. It's going to like leave a line where the fur, like it's going to put a line in the fur, do you know what I mean? So it doesn't really look that good, so it's best just to tack it on by hand just with little stitches from the back. That way you don't see a stitching line through the fur. Penguin Cosplay has a few questions, so we'll take them one by one. What are some tips when you go fabric shopping? For the most part, know what you want before you go. Know what colors of the fabric, know what amounts of the fabric you want. You don't have to know the specific fabric or type of fabric you want, but have a general idea before you go and make sure you know your budget so you can stay within it while you're shopping. What's the best way to make a pattern from scratch? I prefer draping, which means you take a cloth and you drape it over a dress form and then pin it down and use a pencil to mark the shape and make a pattern. You can draft it just by pencil and measurements from scratch, but I find that's way harder and usually doesn't fit me as well. Draping it's not difficult, but it is a more advanced skill, and I actually learned how to drape from a course in college. So if you can take any pattern making by hand or draping classes, I definitely recommend it because you will learn a lot more than I can just try and tell you secondhand. Her last question is, does puffy paint last on fabric? Depends on what fabric, but as you saw in my, oh you didn't, that was my first Harley Quinn bodysuit. Okay, welcome to 6 years ago from my first Harley Quinn bodysuit. And you see these diamonds? This is fabric paint. 6 years ago, this fabric paint has held up. And it is on spandex material. The fabric paint itself does not stretch, but all the fabric around it does. It's never peeled off, it's never cracked, it is still here. Loda Weber asks, what is the best way to sew or to approach sewing a bodice or a corset? To end up with a really nice corset, you need a really nice pattern. And I did this in a tutorial, I have it on my YouTube. It's by taping your body, and that way you get an exact pattern, and all you have to do is cut it up, cut out your fabric, and sew it together. It's really not that difficult, but I also have a really old tutorial. It was back when I did my first tutorials in photo form on my Deviant. I will post the link down below, but I made a silk and lace blue corset, and I have the whole thing step by step. They're really not that hard. As long as you have a good pattern to start with, it is going to fit you perfectly. The RPG Adventurers asks, do you have any tips on how to alter patterns so they're more fitted? Hi guys! Again, the best way to do this is to make a mock-up and then fit that mock-up to you, and then cut apart the pieces of that mock-up and use that as your new pattern. Look at me preach. I hate making mock-ups. It takes so much time, and I absolutely loathe having to do it. But if you do, the finished product will fit you much better. HarleyQuinn.Zell, is that what that says, or did I just write it weird? HarleyQuinn.Zill asks, what is the best way to prevent fabric from fraying? Number one is to use a serger. That machine itself, you're supposed to run the edges of your fabric through, and it seals them with a thread looping around the edge to keep them from fraying. If you do not have a serger, pinking shears are the next way to go. These are pinking shears. They have a zigzag texture to them. So that way when you cut out the fabric, it cuts it out in little zigzag edges, and that prevents the fabric from fraying. For the most part, it does really well. Some fabrics that fray really bad, it honestly doesn't help, but you just gotta deal with it. But for the most part, this prevents the majority of fabrics from getting strings everywhere. She also asks, other than spandex, what is the best fabric to make for a bodysuit? I mainly prefer spandex. It's a much nicer fit and it has the most stretch of all fabrics to use for a bodysuit. But I have also used double knits for leggings, such as my Assault on Arkham legging. Double knit is essentially like t-shirt fabric, so it's stretchy in both ways, but it is not as stretchy as spandex. Magenta Fire asks, what are your best tips for a first-time sewer? You are gonna hit obstacles and roadblocks. Just keep going. It's the creation, the end product is going to be beautiful and you're gonna look gorgeous wearing it. Just you have to keep going and complete it. Oh, you make it look so easy. Guys, it is not easy. You're not there every night when I'm freaking out and stressing out that things are not working. But it's okay. Just make yourself a cup of tea, calm down, work on something else for a little bit, and then come back to it. Something will always go wrong. You can't stop it. You just have to get through it. Steph_53_ asks, how do you paint designs on fabric and tips to make it look nice? I use fabric paint. You saw it on my Harley Quinn bodysuit. You saw it in pictures of my Snow White bodice. I just use fabric paint and take my time. Make sure the fabric paint is very smooth when I applique it. You can use it straight from the bottle or you can glob it out and use a paintbrush like normal paint. Just take your time, make your lines crisp, and it will look on point. And then I only have one question through Twitter because I'm not that active on Twitter, but I'm trying, okay, I'm trying. And that comes from Iron Primus 117. I can read my own writing. Iron Primus 117. What kind of sewing machine do you own, and do you have any tips for sewing boot covers? As in Superman boot covers. My machine is a Brother XR1335 and I absolutely love my machine. It's very basic, it's not a super expensive machine. It has a lot of different stitches, but I only use like 4 of them. But my machine is extremely basic and I've done everything with it, so. And then for boot covers, that's probably going to be another Sewing 101 tutorial. An old video of my Harley Quinn shoe covers might help you. You do the exact same process except for a bigger shoe, for a boot. But you sew it together and do everything the same way. So we'll kind of start there and see if that helps you. That is it for this Q&A. Thank you all so much for submitting your questions. And look forward to next month's Q&A. We'll have a different theme and I will post on my Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter openings for those questions at the beginning of next month. All of those social media links are listed below, as well as they will be around on the blooper screen in the next clips. So thank you all so much for watching. Don't forget to like, favorite, and subscribe to my channel, and I will see you next time. Bye! Semi-inexpensive machine to buy. I can't even read my own writing. I should type things out. I have an itch. I'm getting you, bird. I have an itch.